keep them in your home or love to see them in theirs. These are the creatures that bring us all together.
Reptiles. We're going to be delving into the experiences of reptile lovers from around the block and around the world. This is the Reptile Talk Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? This is Jeremy Turchin from Brassman Reptiles.
I'm Rabbit. I'm keeping it real.
And I would highly suggest, if you're listening to this audio only, you need to go to the YouTube video so you can understand. They need to. They need to, because holy shit. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it was David Levinson.
I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
That's fine. That's fine. Side note, the number of folks that I have told the story of last year's Daytona where Mark first met Dave and Dave was trying to buy his shorts.
His shorts off of him.
People are like, how did he react? And I was like, he stood his ground. He did survive.
He did not sell the shorts.
And he did not sell the shorts. No, that is correct. That is correct. Oh man. How are you doing, Rob? We're in the middle of a doubleheader right now.
Yeah, hey. I'm doing pretty good, honestly. I really enjoyed that episode, and I would love to have them on again to talk about their pet shop and what they got going on. I think there's some really cool, interesting little tidbits in there. So I love that. And then I'm also really looking forward to this episode too. The person that we're about to have on is really into Candoia, which I love Candoia. They're the second snakes I ever kept. I got a ball python, and then right after that I got Candoia, and I've almost always had them in my collection. I don't right now, but I've almost always had them in my collection. I love them. There are a lot of other cool, interesting critters. So I'm hyped to have them on and to talk about this. So this is going to be really cool. But before we get started, tonight's episode is brought to you by Black Box Cages. Check out blackboxcages.com if you're looking for a new enclosure, a new rack. Check them out. Really great options. Lots of variety. I've got some 3-foot cages, 4-foot cages, and some racks. And let me tell you, I'm digging it. I love it. Super easy to set up. Shipping was pretty easy, and literally it just took a couple weeks for them to get here. Quickest turnaround time in the game. So if you're in the market for a rack or an enclosure, check out blackboxcages.com. I think they still got that code for Reptile Talk. You get a little discount at the checkout. So who doesn't like a little discount here and there? So make sure that if you're getting that, put in the code, lets them know that we sent you, and I'm sure they'll be happy that we sent you along.
Hey, absolutely. And also just an FYI for everybody that is watching right now on YouTube, we had a weird situation happen with Facebook where apparently they think that the live event notifications for the live stream are somehow cybersecurity risks. So we're trying to figure that out with Facebook. Don't really know if it's an us problem, if it's a StreamYard problem, if it's just Facebook being really weird or what. So if you are here watching on YouTube, thank you so much. If you feel so inclined, please share this video out, because we're only able to get it out to a fraction of the people that we normally would. So because I was so caught off guard. I was literally out, opened up my phone, opened up Facebook, and it was like, you have all of these things going on. And I'm like, wait, what is going on? And I had to manually go to each one and appeal it. And it was absolutely absurd. So if you're here on YouTube, thank you. If it's your first time on the YouTube channel, please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you always know when we go live for episodes. And yeah, so that, I think that's all the business I had to take care of for all of that chaos, because Lord, you can ask Mark. I'm sitting there like trying to get this to set up, and I'm like, what is happening? Why? So it's like losing my mind. But
I'm glad that I am just the pretty face that just shows up and just talks at people. I don't have to worry about anything.
dude, it's there are I would like to say I'm fairly well versed in doing what I have to do on social media by now. And when I have things go awry for seemingly no reason, I do get admittedly very upset. Very ridiculous. But Rob, would you like to introduce our guest for the evening?
Dude, I'm so hyped. We've got Christen of Stygian Exotics. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. That's how I say it in my head. So if I'm saying it wrong, I hope that she corrects me.
Bam, let's get her in here. What's up?
Oh,
There we go. Okay.
He's
Hey,
like, just
guys.
kidding.
yeah,
You correct me.
Psych.
yeah, you pronounced it great. So thank you.
Hey, there we go.
Heck
Okay.
yeah.
Look, my last name is Christian, but whenever people talk about me, they say Christensen, and I'm like, you're adding extra letters. I don't know where did they come
weird.
from.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to correct them. That's okay. It's not that
Yeah.
important to me.
It's fine. It's fine.
But I want to make sure that when I'm introducing people and their businesses, I want to make sure I'm doing it right. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I got myself
Yeah.
a Sprite right here. I only got peed on by one snake today, so that's
Okay.
good. You know,
good.
right?
Yeah.
Small victories. A win is a win.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think I got peed on by anybody today. So
Hey.
Well, what are you doing wrong, huh?
right.
Oh
Well,
man.
for the people who might not be familiar with you or the things that you're working with, if you'd love to give us a little introduction of just like, I know you've been on some of the other podcasts, so if people are listening, I guess they can skip over this. But for the people who might not know, because I know we've got a little bit of separate audience and a lot of other people, what kind of brought you up to where you're at right now with reptiles?
I don't know. It's a good question because I feel like my my reptile journey has been strange. When I first got into reptiles, I got into emeralds. That was an emerald tree boa was my first pet snake ever.
Wow.
Yeah, which is ridiculous, right?
That's pretty
Right into the
wild. I'm
deep
not gonna lie.
Yeah. And so I had emeralds for a while, and I had boas for a while, and I did sand boas. And then I got out of it for about 4 years when I got pregnant for the first time. And then I came back to it. We moved and it was all this craziness, but we used to do more monitors and stuff too. I had Gila monsters for a while. And just because of the space and stuff, the space demands, we kind of came back on that. And so now I'm mainly snakes. Snakes is what I do. But Candoia is the majority of my collection. I'd say like probably half of the population is Candoia now. Yeah. And
Hell yeah.
they've really overtaken my life.
They're amazing.
They are
They
amazing.
deserve it.
They're fascinating because they're just so strange. They're just very different than other snake species that I've kept and worked with and even handled before. They're just very unique in their behavior and the way they live and move. And I think the mystery of them is partially what drew me into them too. That why is this snake species not more popular? Because they're really cool looking and
they're small.
They're so small.
Yeah.
And so you can keep them in like an amazing enclosure, but in a smaller space. So it's kind of like they deserve to be more popular than they are for sure.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And my thing right now is like any of the species I keep, I have kind of a hard line of like, I don't want to keep anything over 6 feet anymore. That's where I'm at in my life. Yep. And so they fit that bill, I've got those guys and I do have some emeralds and stuff in the background. That's what's going on back here.
Cool.
And then, I have some rat snakes that I work with too and colubrids and stuff, like European colubrids and
heck yeah,
trinket snakes and things like that. But
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool as well. And so Candoia was like the second snakes I ever got because when I was younger, my dad's terrified of snakes, and so I was not allowed to have snakes when I was a kid until I became basically like a teenager when I was going from middle school to high school. And the first snake I got was a ball python, and then after that I was like into Reptiles magazine from when I was little and like had all the reptile books and did all the reading and blah, 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 blah. And so I was just like, I knew about Candoia from like the couple times I went on the internet, and then they were mentioned in a couple books, and I was like, okay, they're like a dwarf boa species. They don't get very big. So I was like trying to pitch to my dad. I'm like, hey, look, I can get these. They stay small. I don't have to worry about a giant snake. They only, blah, 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 blah. And one of the local shops to me was called Regal Reptiles, and they were in Providence, Rhode Island. And when I would go visit my mom's family in Connecticut, we had to drive past Regal Reptiles to go there. And it was about 30 minutes from my house. And so I would always beg my parents to let me stop there and like look around for a little while just to see what they had. Oh, yeah. And one of the times that I went after I got my first snake, they had Solomon Island ground boas on display, like some Paulsoni, and I was like, oh my God, these things are the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. And this was what, 2004, 2003, or probably 2003.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my, those things are so cool. And so they were $350 or $400 or something. And I was like, I am, 15 years old. I have no money. I can't convince my parents to spend $400 on a pair of snakes, And so after I left, I was like, I could not stop thinking about them. And they weren't like, they weren't the Isabels or the white ones. They were just like, the male was your standard, like brown, like wood brown with like the dark brown and the black triangles on them. And then the female was like a tan, like, I don't know how to describe, like a light tan color with, and she had like orange speckles along the sides and all that jazz. And I was just like so enamored with those snakes. And so I took a lot of time trying to convince my dad to let me get another couple snakes. And then I saved up some money and I went down there and I tried to talk to the guys who run the shop. And I was like, oh man, I would really like to get these. And they're like, well, we can't really wiggle on the price. And I was like, okay, well, I know that you guys have Candoia. Can I see the other stuff? So they had some Viper boas on display. And I was like, okay, a pair of Viper boas it is. And those things bit the shit out of me my whole ride home. Because I was like, they're horrible. And they bit me and pissed all over me. And it just was not having it, right? And so I had done a bunch of research. I was looking at like temperature-wise, what you should do with them, and humidity and this, that, and the other thing. And I had set up enclosures to be like mossy and all this, that, and the other thing. And I could not get these things to eat. I tried getting them anoles. I tried to get them mice, everything, and I could not get them to eat. And it was just a struggle. And so I saved up my money and saved up my money. And I got like another couple $100 or something. And I eventually brought them back to Regal. And I was like, hey, look, I cannot get these things to eat. I really wanted the ground boas, but they were really expensive. You guys have had them on display for a long time. And the guy who was there that day was like, oh yeah, these things have been around here forever and no one really is interested in buying them. So yeah, we'll cut you a deal. We'll take the Viper boas back and you can have the ground boas. And I had those guys for like 8 or 10 years and I got them as adults, and they had been at that shop for at least 5 years as adults. And those are some of I really like, they're one of my favorite boas. Probably my favorite boas. They're just so interesting. They're so cryptic. Their head shape is so unique and so different. And so when I've been talking to a couple of my other friends who have them, and we really wanted to get you on to talk about Candoia because I feel like there's not enough information out there. And I know you've been on a couple of podcasts. I've listened to them, but I was always curious to have you on to talk to you about them.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk about them. So.
Hell yeah. What was the thing that initially drew you to Candoia?
It's funny because I think we were just looking at pictures that like somebody else had posted on the internet, and we're like, what is that? And from there it became like a deep dive, and I started reading scientific papers about them. And then I just went like all in and just bought like 20 of them. And
oh man.
I know, yeah. We just bought like a whole bunch of them as imports, like the adults or whatever that came in. They came in like 2019 or something. And we've just kind of been collecting, as we go. And I did try working with a couple other species within the Candoia family too. Like I had Carinata for a while, and I had the Viper boas for a while. And we kept the Solomon Island tree boas as well, the Australis. But really my love is like the ground boas. I really like the pulsoni, and then the subspecies tasmai. Those are basically my focus now. That's what I have, like the vast majority of them still is those two. I don't know. I just think that they're so understudied and underkept and misunderstood in a lot of ways too, which drives me bananas. Like I can't stand the misinformation. Whenever I see that out there, I can't take it. I don't know. It drives me crazy. There are just a lot of silly myths about them that persist and just seem to be like, like the feeding thing, like they won't eat anything. And it's like, okay, but that's not true.
It's not true anymore. Yeah.
It's not true. And it also is like, I hate to be that guy, but it's like, okay, if your husbandry sucks, they're not going to eat for you. Like,
true.
Like, and that's part of the issue. Like people, they have these babies that are so small, and these babies come out and they're basically prey. They're food for other animals on island. I firmly believe that's like a big deal, is on those islands, they feed a lot of other animals. So of course, like they're very motivated to hide and to be very private and everything. And so if you don't like honor that, they don't do well. They don't thrive, especially in that first like year of their life. It's so critical. But I feel like that's where a lot of people fail with them, and where I get so many messages from people that are like, help, I have 50 babies and they won't eat, and they're 3 months old now, and da da da. And I was like, well, they're dead already. Like they're not, at this point, it's too late. Right. I wish you had reached out when they were born, but I'm like, how do you have it set up? And they've got them set up in these huge tubs, and they're like these itty bitty little snakes. And so of course they're just going to starve themselves. So I don't know. I find all of that to be misinformation that I'm working on fighting one person at a time.
I think that one of the things that people don't think about, and one of the things that I would always have to educate people about, is that snakes, their only form of defense is their mouth to bite, right? Aside from like maybe rattlesnakes or whatever. But the majority of snakes, their only form of defense is their mouth. And when they're eating, their mouth is out of commission and they cannot defend themselves. And they will choose security over food every single time. And so if they don't feel safe, they're not going to feel, they will not give up the opportunity to defend themselves to eat. They would much rather just starve to death than to eat if they don't feel safe. And so you need to create a safe environment for the snake if you want them to take the time where they feel like they can be disarmed basically while they're
eating. It's like, so, and I have had times where I've sent out babies, and I always send out a care sheet. I've like a very explicit care sheet that says exactly how to set them up, and I talk to them beforehand. And still I get like the occasional person that's like, I don't know why they won't eat for me, and they send me a photo of their setup, and it's a 40 gallon. What? So it's tough. You really have to they're just so different from most other boa species in that regard. Like it's so much more amplified. That need for security. So.
And it's like people look at that and they're going, yeah, but I'm giving it this like giant enclosure. That's what it wants, right? And it's like,
no.
Actually, no.
Actually, no. Actually, take like a leftover food container, and that's what they want.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's one of the interesting elements of like keeping reptiles today, right? Where we're getting a lot more keepers that are very invested in like making sure they're giving the animal the best, which is great. 100%.
Right.
But the best for you might not be the best for the snake.
Right. And also some of that has become very blanketed, right? Like how many different species are we hearing like, oh yeah, put it in a 40 gallon and that's sufficient for so many different species. So it's just like actually like it's as frustrated as we get.
Actually.
Yeah, right.
Actually,
because it's like we see the same thing like legislatively, right? Like U.S. ARC battles and stuff, where we just get these massive blanket things, and people are like, "Well, you didn't think about this whole subsection of things right over here that none of that applies to." But
right.
So it's the same kind of thing. So finding these niche species that really do exist in a space where it's like, no, please. Small.
Please don't do that.
Please don't stress them out. Like they
Yeah.
don't want that bright light. They don't want a UVB light. They don't want to be sitting up in some beautiful planted terrarium right off the bat. Like,
Yeah.
Mm.
You
I
can
always,
get them there, but not off the
yeah,
bat. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And I tell people like, generally for the first 6 months to a year, you want to keep them in like a shoebox. And then I say, listen to your snake. If you upgrade them and they stop eating and you can't get them to eat for 2 to 3 weeks, they're not ready. Move them back, give them a little bit longer or change what you've done or add more plants or whatever. But they just, they need such an incremental, slow growth system. You just can't treat them like a BCI or something where you just plop them in there and they're like, all right, food,
Yeah.
like I've had snakes that I've shipped out like babies before where they're like yearlings. They've had, four meals a month for 12 months or something. And then they go to this place and the guy's like, I can't get them to eat. You sold me a snake that's not eating. And I'm like, no, I didn't,
No, yeah.
That's not what I do. So
Yeah.
it's hard to change people's minds sometimes. I've had people like dig their heels in too and be like, no, you're wrong. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what I'm doing. I've kept all these snakes. And I'm like, okay, well,
these are not the same as your other snakes.
yeah, it's not a snake is a snake is a snake. It's just not, it's not applicable to this.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's one of the main things that like really drew me to them, along with the look. Is just they're so different.
so unique.
Like you were saying, even just the way that they move around, the way that they
Yeah.
slither, and like they will watch you with their pupil, similar to like how a retic watches
yeah.
people. It's
Their
so
pupils
interesting.
turn and watch you, and
Yeah.
they're very I don't want to call them smart, but there's a lot going on there that I don't see in some of my other snakes, where they're definitely like analyzing and kind of watching you. And then I get some of them though that will thump the front of the thing when I walk by because they think I have food every time. So it's like,
There are some similarities across many species.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're just like food, a thigh,
Yeah.
like no. But,
That's funny. Yeah, I've listened to you talk on some of the other podcasts about how they're so frequently mislabeled, and I see Tasmai labeled as Pulsoni all the time, and it drives me crazy. And I don't.
I was gonna say I've started seeing a lot of ones where like they'll have viper boas on the table listed as Solomon Island ground boas, and it makes me crazy. It's just so rampant, and I will have people like I went to Tinley last year, and there was a woman that had a Tasmai boa. It was a captive born Tasmai boa that had been dropped from like an import or whatever, and she was like up and down, like, no, this is a Solomon Island ground boa. It's Solomon, and I was like, no, it's not. Like, it doesn't look anything like this. It's just like, I don't know. I ended up buying it anyway, but. Like, I'll take it, whatever. But
I'm gonna put the right label. I'm buying it just so I can put the right label on
so
it.
I can do it and walk off with it and feel better about that, so that nobody else buys it.
Amazing.
It's rough because there are definitely like, and there are some reseller companies out there that just don't care either. Like I've tried to talk to them about it and be like, this is not what you think this is. Like, I mean, I've seen Indonesian tree boas listed as like, I've seen those listed as Solomon Island ground boas, and it's just. Some of that stuff is like, it takes 2 seconds to Google search to be like,
literally,
is this a Solomon Island ground boa, or is this crazy lady that reached out to me correct? Perhaps, that's just, I hate to be that guy, but I'm also like, I don't, I have seen a lot of people already accidentally trying to crossbreed, not trying to, but like, they've got a Tasmai and they've got a Pulsoni and they'll put them together and be like, I'm going to have babies. And I'm like, no, please don't do that.
Stop. Stop right now.
It's so bad. Like,
yeah.
It's just rampant, and in a lot of that is, they do look a lot alike. I will give them that. The Tasmai and the Pulsoni in particular, there are a lot of ones that even I sometimes will struggle with. Like someone will send me pictures, and I'll be like, okay, I need a couple different angles, and you kind of. And there's I try to tell people like there's a checklist. Like, do they have most of these traits or most of these traits? So you can kind of determine like, okay, it's this thing. It's 90% this thing. But really, some of that stuff, like every once in a while, I would say like one out of every, like, I don't know, like 50 people that ask me for that, I'll say I really can't guarantee, like I really can't say with 100% confidence. And the only way they'll know for sure is their maximum size someday, because the maximum sizes are so different. But
did you see the Colombian government is spending almost $4 million to relocate Pablo Escobar's hippos?
In Brazil, a school of piranha attacked and injured at least 8 people at a beach resort.
First fatal mountain lion attack in 20 years in California.
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You may have seen me on Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive or Shark Week. So join me and my friends as we break down animal news from around the world and discuss all things wildlife. Click here to unlock these animal mysteries.
Yeah, I think that it's become. I thought that it would get better over time because I remember back when I got mine, there was like a lot of confusion because people were like, "Oh, those are Solomon Island tree boas," and I was like, "These are not Solomon Island tree boas, bro.
No.
These are not even close. They're not even close to being the same thing."
I feel like such an asshole being like, that's not what this is, but like I feel like it doesn't take very long.
Not what it is.
Yeah, it's just,
not what
and
it
I don't
is.
feel like it takes very long once you get into this, once you get into them to be like, okay, that's that, and you start to notice what the differences are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
And
when
for-
they're babies too, it might be a little bit tougher to tell on like the Tasmai versus the
Yes.
Bolsonai, and then once they get bigger, it's like, oh, okay,
Right.
that's much more noticeable, you know.
Right, for sure. Yeah, like I have Tasmai babies right now, and like there are definitely a couple of them in the litter that I'm like, if I didn't know better, I could see where I would think that might be like a Pulsoni baby. But most of them have, most of the Tasmai have the mottled bellies. That's one of the biggest giveaways. And then they have this weird blushing that happens between their diamond shapes, like the diamonds. They'll have blushing that happens between those. And that's a very common Tasmai trait. And then their heads are just so much darker. They have like, it's almost like a Siamese coloring.
Like
Those are
soot on the top of their head.
yeah, like someone sprinkled with pepper or something. I don't know, but it gets darker over time too. So that color, most of them tend to get darker over time. So again, it's like a checklist. It's like this trait, but not always. So
yeah. And so for your babies, what are you using for like substrate?
I use I really have gone back and forth on this a lot because I'm one of those people that's always kind of looking for the best thing.
Yeah.
I'm always trying out new stuff to see what I like. And, maybe tomorrow I'll try something new. But right now, my adults, I keep on like the breeder block Reptile, and I mix it with moss, like sphagnum moss.
Yep.
And then the babies, I usually try to keep on like the microchip blend. I really like that. And the itty bitty babies, I go back and forth between using like just shredded aspen and that, because the issue with the babies is that when they're wrapping, sometimes they lose track of where the head is. And so if you have really particulate substrate or like sandy chips or really like fine cocoa bedding or something like that, they lose track of where the head is and then they just give up and leave.
Yeah.
They're just like, well, I can't spend any more time on this. And they just go. It's so frustrating. Because it took me a while to figure out that was what was going on. But I started watching them and I was like, oh my God, this idiot can't figure out. It's right there. But that's what they do. And they stopped doing it when I put them on a substrate that doesn't have as much give. So like with the shredded aspen, it kind of binds together. And so I have to spot change it more often because it molds quickly and gets kind of gross when they get in their water dish and spill the water and all that stuff. But it's one of the only beddings I found that I don't have that issue with. So especially with the fresh babies, like my fresh babies I have in the back on this side. This is Tasmai babies right now. So those guys are like, I have them all on the shredded aspen because it's just those first couple meals are so critical. I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to like have them give up and then not try again. So I don't know.
And once they get on a roll, usually they're pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's just getting them there,
Getting them to figure out that food goes in the belly. Yeah, that's the that is the struggle. It's like, oh God. But it's also not as bad as some people make it out to be. I say this all the time, but like 50% to 70% of every single litter I produce will take unscented pinkies almost right off the bat. And again, that's talking about being set up appropriately in a small space where they feel comfortable enough to eat, the right substrate, all of that is very critical. And then the other like 30 to 50% or whatever, usually I can get them going with salmon, egg yolk, scenting, or using like guppies or platies.
That's what I was going to say. Guppies. Yeah. I got some trouble. Babies started on guppies, and
Yep.
it kind of blew my mind, but I was like, oh, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and what I have found too is that if you get them young enough, the snake's young enough. So if they're like 2 to 3 weeks old, you've tried a couple pinkies and they're like, no, thank you. Give them those guppies. It starts their digestive system, and then they are more likely to take that pinky the next offering. They're like, oh, I am hungry. And what I have found is that 2 to 3 fish in their bellies will turn them on to pinkies. Just, it seems like magic. It seems stupid, right? But it gets them going, you know? So I like whatever works. And then those ones, in that case, the ones that I start on fish or whatever, I keep them longer just to make sure there's not going to be any issue. Like I'm paranoid about I'm paranoid about like parasites and stuff. And, you know, so, and you never know when you're feeding live fish like that. So, but
the only way you can get around it, I think, is breeding your own. And I know some people will breed their own, but honestly, it's such a pain in the ass to do that.
Yes.
I did not get into snakes so that I could breed fish. Okay.
No. I've tried that. I've gone the route of having a morning gecko colony too, and I absolutely hated it. I just hated keeping it. So not for me.
Yeah, one of the other ones that I was thinking of too is Pictus geckos. One of my friends, Rich Sawtell, he used to breed a ton. He was throwing eggs away because they were so prolific.
Oh, wow.
But when they hatch out, they're so small that they would actually be like a really good meal for a baby Candoia, because they hatch out way smaller than like leopard geckos or any of that stuff for like a comparative size gecko, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have some morning geckos right now that I'm going to use to offer some of my stubborn ones. But we'll see how that goes.
Hell yeah. That is so freaking cool. I even back then I was like, why are people not keeping these? They're small. They are not super bitey. Like I've had one that was really quick to bite, but most of mine have not been quick to bite. They're real cryptic, and then sometimes they will just bite you out of nowhere. But for the most part, they're pretty chill.
They remind me of like how cockatoos have the black eyes, and it's hard to tell when they're excited and getting ready to nail you. It's almost like that, where they don't give you that body language that you're about to get bit. You just get bit.
Anacondas are like that too.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh God, yes.
I hate that about them.
Yeah, I don't love it. I don't love it. But it is interesting though. The wild caught ones have a nastier attitude for sure. And like I have something like 10 wild caught Tasmite currently, and out of those animals, I can safely handle one of them. So the rest of them will just bite the crap out of me, like over and over again, trying to tear my skin off, I swear. But the captive born ones are not like that. They are super chill. I've had, I was like shocked, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, these are all going to be jerks, and I'm going to have one that's nice out of the whole litter. No, they're all laid back and cool. And I've like, last year I only held one back, and I'm regretting kicking myself for that now, but I only held one back last year, and he's amazing. He's super sweet still. Sometimes I'll get tagged on accident if he thinks it's feeding day, but that's just like, he's like, oh, sorry. You know, he pulls back and he's like, oh, but, like he's just not nasty, and none of the babies I have are nasty. So, it's funny because I've been breeding Pulsoni for, 5 years or whatever, and I've produced hundreds and hundreds of babies. And I've only ever had one baby where I was like, holy crap, there's something wrong with this animal. Like he was that, you know, you're like, Jesus, you know, but most of them are very docile and very placid. And sometimes like they spook and they'll tag you or something. But it's so interesting to me how different that personality switches right away. Like in just
even on the first gen. That's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah,
all the ones I had were wild caught. So
I'm looking forward to it because I have 3rd and 4th generation Pulsonis that I'm raising up right now. So when those are ready to breed, and so I'm trying to work on also line breeding for prey preference to try to hopefully get, you know, an 80% will take pinkies and 90%, you know, so I can get to that point. And we'll see where that goes. Of course, it's going to take a long time because they take forever to mature. But
right.
But I've got a head start on it. I'm working on it. So
where do you find yours are starting to reach maturity at? Are you finding like 5 years, 6 years?
So it's variable because I think it very much depends on how well they started. Makes that first year of feedings makes a huge difference in growth rate. But I've found that the males are breedable right around that like 3 to 4 year old of size range age. They just start to like they'll start to do the fasting in springtime, and you'll kind of start to get the sense that they're ready to go. And then the females really like safely like 5 to 8 years is mature. And it's hard because I have a female that was born in 2020 she looks to me like she should only be like 3 years old. And then I have another 2020 that looks like she's like 3 times the size. So their growth rates just seem to be so variable, even within the same species. And again, I don't know if that just has to do with that first year. Maybe that one had a rougher year, because I didn't produce the one that is smaller. But that stuff is all very interesting, and it's hard to answer those questions when I get them, because it's just so like I try to keep like a weight, like they should be between this many grams and this many grams. But generally speaking, I wouldn't breed a female that was under 5 years for sure. Like one that would be eating large mice to small rats would be mature, in my opinion. And then the size of that in wild caught is smaller though, because I've had ones come in gravid and drop babies that were like only 24 inches long, or like very small. But they're older, and we know that wild caught snakes grow more slowly than captive raised snakes. It's just because they're not getting offered meals every week, and so it's just very fascinating. It's very interesting. And again, it's hard to answer that question with 100%.
No, yeah, I know. There's so many different factors that go into it, and I just think that there's just not a whole lot of information out there about it. So whenever I got people who have hands-on information, I always try to ask them what their general idea is, because like when Jerry Conway was still alive, I talked to him a little bit about them, and that was like after he had already gotten rid of all his Candoia and everything. I figure, talk to him while he had the chance, and then he passed away several years ago. And he was just like, "Oh, you'll know when they're big enough to breed because they breed." And I'm like, "Come on,
God.
that's the most non-answer." Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
It's hard too, because like if you breed them too young, you will know you're gonna get a dinky, undersized, runty litter. None of them are gonna thrive. They won't do well. And then I've seen people breed them year after year too, and then wonder why they have these terrible litters, why they're all undersized and crappy. And it's like, they have to have a year off between breeding. So like if I breed a female this fall, 2024, I won't breed her again until 2026, like that fall 2026, because they need that time to recoup the weight and the nutrients and everything. Because they oftentimes don't eat. Like the Tasmai litter that I have right now of 17 babies, she went off food from October of 2023 until just after she had those babies. 2 weeks ago. It's a long time for snake to eat. So they need that time to recoup.
Especially because during that time is the babies are pulling the resources from them, and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. And so their body has been giving all of those resources over to the babies, and then now they have to try and catch back up. I'd be curious to see if similar things happen where like the bone density goes down and they're pulling calcium from different places to
that would be interesting.
Babies.
I know that would be interesting to know. But yeah, I definitely noticed like it takes a lot out of them, and they look like deflated sacks. Like afterward, they push them all out, and then they're all like wrinkly looking and super skinny, and it's like, all right, let's get you going. But I was also reading the comment about the 8-month fast. I've had the longest pulsoni fast I've had was 12 months, and she was just starting to show weight loss around that time, and then she was like, "Okay, I'll start eating again," and just
randomly for no reason.
I just don't, and I was like, "Okay, like I guess we're doing this." So now she eats great, but it's just sometimes they're a mystery.
Yeah, that's the exact same thing that happened to me when I got my first pair. They literally they were eating great for like a year and a half, and then randomly they just went off feed for 9 months. And like after 8 months, I brought them to the vet. I was like, I think something's wrong.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, like they look fine. Like just keep offering them different things every now and again. Don't like. And I was like, I only offer them food once every 3 weeks now, just like
Right.
to see if they're interested. And then one day they just decided to turn back on. I'm like,
Isn't that crazy?
okay, that was weird.
Yeah, I've had people too. Oh, this is a good point because the babies, once they've started eating and they have good meals in them and stuff, they can go on long hunger strikes and be fine. And I have in the past sold babies before where like, so the stress of shipping it really impacts them. It really hits them. Yeah. And so sometimes it takes them several weeks to get back on board. I always tell them I try to tell people too, like, if it's like 2 to 3 weeks, they're still not eating for you, do a live pinky just to jumpstart them. And then they should go back to the frozen thawed after that. They just need that reminder to like get going again. But I've had people panic after 2 to 3 weeks of not eating and force feed them. And like,
no.
I know.
God.
Like, I know you can't do that. Like,
now you traumatized it.
Yeah, now it's really not going to eat for you.
Right.
So, and I'll get people be like, should I syringe feed them? Should I do this? And I'm like,
no, just leave it alone.
Just leave it alone.
Just stop.
It'll be okay.
I think that's probably one of the most frustrating things.
Yes. Yeah.
About
that
sending.
Panic.
Yeah, it's just like, do you realize there is not some person in the wilderness that's like ringing the dinner bell? It's Tuesday, guys. Like,
time to syringe feed.
Come get your appropriately sized rodent. Like,
oh man,
no.
I think it's so weird because, like, when I get a new snake, I don't even offer it food for the first 2 weeks. I'm like, shipping was traumatic. It needs to just chill and be left the fuck alone.
Right, because the last thing I want is like a regurg or something,
Yep. Exactly. Cause so much more damage than what's necessary.
Than just letting them go an extra couple of weeks. And those guys, when they're eating well and they've had 10, 20 meals under their belt, like they can go several months without eating and it's not going to impact them at all. I don't know. Again, that goes back to like being misunderstood. They're very misunderstood as a species.
Yep.
Right.
It's not a corn snake.
No,
it is not. It is so not a corn snake. And even then, corn snakes can go for a while without eating, guys. Like,
true. The whole winter. Like,
how about a whole season? So
do you have any plans to expand into some of the other Candoia, or are you just like, because I know Aspera people that are hyped on Viper boas because there's like the red ones and the striped ones and the albino that had popped up a while back, and
those all died.
Hypos and stuff. Yeah.
You know about that, right?
Yeah. Well, I knew one of the guys who owned. There's a guy in New York named John, and he has got a lot of albino stuff, and he has had a couple albinos over the years. And I know that he bred one of them once and got a couple babies, but the babies never started, and blah, 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 blah.
He lost several hundred Viper boas because have you heard about the fungus infection, the fungal infection with them? All right, that wiped his entire collection out. And that has happened to several other collections in the States. Actually, within the last year, I've heard of several other people having this go through their collection as well. The problem with the Viper boas is they can be so intensive on the maintenance that if you don't nail it, or you don't have the time or the effort to spend on that, like they crash quickly. And for me personally, I am just not into that right now. I just it's not that I don't want to spend time maintaining my snakes and stuff, but like I had Viper boas for a while and I was really into them and having like, learning about them and everything. And I had some really amazing animals, and I had a bright red one that died while she was gravid. And she had like, I think it was 17 babies or something, 16, 17 babies inside her. I cut her open just to see, because I was like, what happened? I wanted to know. And like that really just knocked me down a little bit in my confidence with them. And then I just kind of was like, I can't do this. I don't want to deal with them anymore. So I got out of working with the Viper boas. I'm also like, I really want to focus on building a solid collection of these captive born and bred baby Paulsoni and Tasmai, so I can have an impressible, sizable collection of captive animals from different bloodlines that I can have, offer people pairs that are unrelated and continue to work on that and have these 3rd, 4th generation stuff. And I can't afford that much space to have all of that, everything I want, so I have to kind of pick and choose. And because I'm so invested in my projects with like the Pulsoni and the Tasmai right now, it's too much to have that as well, to have that on my plate too. So like, luckily my colubrids and stuff they're relatively low maintenance, so I can have those going on in the background and it's not like a big deal. The emeralds, I've got that nailed down. It's not a big deal. But the Candoia, I was like, I got to narrow it down to just, these 2 that I'm really into. So.
Yeah, I tell you, when you've got something like that, that's your focus, it makes it so much easier to be successful, because when you have a larger sample size, you can notice, okay, these females start to go into an ovulation after these sequence of things happen, and it usually happens around this time of year, and being able to pinpoint that, as opposed to having like, okay, I've got 5 of each of them, and I'm gonna miss when these ones ovulate, and then I'm gonna pair these ones at the wrong time, and this male doesn't get along with this female, and all that jazz.
Yeah, well, you get more specialized in it too, and you get I feel like it's easier to be taken seriously if you're really specializing in what you're really passionate about. And I think that shows when you're talking to people, what you're actually interested in and what kind of projects are motivating you to push forward. And so for me, just like, I just wasn't finding that satisfaction and that interest with the Viper Boas and stuff. That's just not where I ended up, but
that's fair. Honestly. I remember when I got my first pair, when I got those Viper Boas, when I really wanted the Salmonine ground boas, the kid that was working at that day was like, hey man, they're super cool. You can get bit by them, and tell people you got bit by a venomous snake, because it looks like a viper. And I was like,
no,
that is not why I want these.
No. That's not the right motivation there.
What do you mean that's not the reason, Rob? That makes you cool.
Right.
I was like, man, I fucking hate getting bit. That shit sucks.
I also didn't enjoy getting pissed on all the time. And Viper Boas, like, every time you handle them, you get peed on. And I just am. Maybe the captive born ones will be better. I don't know.
And their musk is pretty pungent.
It's brutal. It's brutal. Yeah.
It's maybe not as bad as water snake musk, but it is up there.
Oof.
It's pungent. Oof. It doesn't come out of the carpet. Let's put it that way.
It doesn't come off your hand.
Let alone fabric.
Bleach and freaking antibacterial soap, and it's still like 2 days later, you can still kind of smell it on there.
Oh man, Viper Boa still?
Yeah, right. Yeah. You gotta get that heavy duty contractor soap that's got the.
No,
man.
Oh God.
No, they're great snakes for somebody else.
Yeah. And then there was a little while where like Indo Tribos are coming in, but then like no one can get them started, and people are just having trouble with them. And the Australis and Bibroni, the tree boas. One of our friends, Jeremy Trace, has got some of the. I think he's got Australis.
Yeah.
And,
that's right.
And
they're
he's
great animals.
Twice, and he's like, they're so cool. They're really interesting. And he's like, I don't want to like keep them or remove them or like whatever. And I was like, you should keep them. They're so freaking cool, especially because you've proven them. Like, they're, and I don't know. It's just, I love seeing people who have got interesting projects like that going on.
Yeah, I think the Australis stand a chance of having a place in the hobby as well, because I think that they're not as dependent on eating lizards and stuff as like the Indos are. Whereas Carinata, all the time I hear over and over again that they'll have one that's doing great in captivity for a year and then they just crash and die. And that's been like a pretty common theme across Indo keepers in the States in particular, because there's so much of a mindset of putting them on rodents. And I really just firmly believe that they are not built to eat rodents all the time. I think that makes them obese and it causes problems over time. I think a rodent here and there is fine, but the Indos really prey so much on lizards and frogs, even through adulthood, where they come from, that I think that's a big part of why people are seeing those crashes. Whereas like I think Australis get bigger and they can eat rodents and birds more successfully. So
And I think that that's probably a commonplace or should start to become commonplace across a bunch of different species, that having that varied diet, where it's not like mammal fat, rodent fat is just like it can be so deteriorative.
Yeah, there's a lot of studies about Woma pythons and how Woma pythons in captivity in the States are all dying early because of fatty tumor issues, because people just feed them rats their whole lives. And so they only live 10 to 15 years in captivity and stop producing at like 10 years old. Whereas like it is very like, it's not like myth, it's fact that they prey on mostly lizards and bearded dragons, and they're eating like a lot of lizard and snake prey in the wild, and like forcing them onto these high fat diets in captivity is just not good for them. So like my Woma collection, I feed mainly like 70% bird kind of diet, and then I try to offer like other proteins like frog and lizard and stuff when I have it. But and then I do rodents like mice and stuff, but I try to keep it lean. So
and let's be real, it's a Woma. It's gonna eat damn near everything
Just
you put in
anything,
front of it.
A snake hook, a light bulb, like
my baby Candoia that don't make it go into the Woma mouths. So
it's
recycle.
Waste not, want not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So what I know that there are some other projects that you're working with. You mentioned the boas, and then I think you had Saharan Sand Boas too.
Yeah. I've got some cool Saharan stuff that I'm working on. Not a lot of people are taking them seriously still, unfortunately, and so me and a couple friends are some of the only people really trying to captive breed them in the States. But most of my Saharan collection is sunbursts, which are the reduced patterning, and then I have a calico patterned one. I don't know if she's calico or piebald. I haven't been able to really determine that. And of course, until I breed her and prove out what's happening, it's hard to say. And then I have another one that's like a hypermel or an IMG. Again, I don't really know what's happening with this. She's like hypermelanin. So instead of the orange, it's all black. So it's like brown and black instead of orange and black. She's an amazing snake. And then I have a buddy that has one that has clearly the same trait happening, but it's only on half of her body, which is why I was like, is this like an IMG kind of thing going on where like it darkens over time and my animal's just older? So we've been trying to like kind of keep in touch about that. Like, is she developing darker color? And so it's those two animals are going to be put to breeding this winter/spring. So hopefully I'll have some eggs from that. And then my guess is that they're going to be, hets when I hold them back. I don't think I'm going to get any visual anything right off the bat. That would be a pipe dream, obviously. But like how cool would that be? But so I'm anticipating having to hold back 10, 15 Saharans next year to raise those up and have hets of that stuff. But that's an exciting project, I think, that will help push them forward and like be more taken seriously, because they really aren't. They're just kind of seen as like junk animals, which really sucks, because they're one of the coolest snake species I keep, in my opinion. I think they are fascinating. They don't bite. They're super cool. They have some neat behaviors. Their little tail stub, they can make it rigid and like stab you with it, which I think is fun. I don't know. And they're one of the only boa species that lay eggs, so I think that's cool too. I see Taylor's question. Any plans on getting the anery? Not at the price he's asking for them. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Because the problem is I have to pair it. I have to hope that it's not half dead when I get it, because it's wild caught with somebody who doesn't specialize in Saharans. That really, I'm just not trying to be mean, but like it could arrive half dead, starving, who knows, whatever. Because they're treated like trash a lot. And then I have to, get her to breeding size. She's still a baby, and then I have to make hets and then hold those back and raise those up. So like I'm not dropping $1,500 on a snake like that. And he won't really, like, my buddy has tried to talk to him before and he hasn't really answered his questions super great. So again, it's like I don't know. If the price drops, maybe I'll look at it, because I would love to have them. I would love to have more of those in my collection for sure, but I'm just not willing to do that right now. Which is a bummer, because I'm like, the longer it sits in someone's hands that isn't passionate about
Yeah.
them. It drives me crazy. I'm like, I could be feeding her to get her ready to breed, and
Yeah.
it is
Yep.
what it
Jer-
is.
Jeremy, doesn't Steve have some of those?
Does he?
I thought he
I think
bred some a couple of years ago.
I think
Saharans.
he might.
Yeah.
I think he
Steve-
might have to go back and
Steve
look. But
Tillis.
I think so.
I
He-
love that they're starting to get more attention and starting to be taken a little bit more seriously. I think the sunbursts have been like some of the best thing that's happened for them in a while. So
Yeah. They're definitely an interesting species, especially boas that lay eggs. You're like, what the hell is going on here? It's like,
and they're weird eggs too. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of them, but they're
they're
see-through.
like thin. Yeah, they're like thin. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the babies moving inside. So like
That's
when
so
I was checking on them, I'd shine a flashlight and you can watch them like rotating and moving around in their eggs and stuff. It's crazy.
That is so strange.
It's super cool. And then the second they pop those out, so they pop their little fat faces out and it kind of plugs the hole. But the second they come out, it just deflates into a flat sack. It's so crazy. It's crazy. I love it.
I just looked because it was gonna bug me if I didn't. And the last post he made of them was back in 2020. So I don't know if he still is working with them, but he was just a few years ago.
Yeah, and I thought he produced one clutch of them. So
yeah.
They might have gotten overshadowed by the Sunset and Mocha Borneo stuff.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. My whole thing is like I work with stuff that I find interesting. I'm never gonna make mad bank off of my Saharans. That's not my goal. But I think they're a cool species. I think they deserve to be taken more seriously. And I hope that in a couple years I can offer some cool stuff like calico sunbursts and stuff like just cool reduced pattern, crazy anery stuff. Like, how cool would that be? I don't know. I think it would put them on the map a little bit more. So
yeah, I think that also people just don't know enough about them because a lot of people look at them and they're like, "Oh, Kenyan Sand Boa," and it's like, okay, no, not quite.
No.
And then if people learned about the eggs and the short incubation time and the clear coat on them and all that sort of stuff, I think that it would make it more interesting for people. I just think that most people just don't know.
And it's interesting. I've got a lot of people that I talk to and who have bought babies from me and stuff that like the interest is growing. It's there. People are starting to take note. And I've got people like friends that are, they're growing their collection slowly. And now they've got a couple captive born babies and this, and they're planning these things. And I think slowly that's starting to take hold. And I really just believe like it just takes a handful of people to keep going and keep pushing it and be like, these are cool. These are worth looking at. Like, I know they're not as interesting as maybe like my high white Candoia or something to some people, but like, I don't know. I find great satisfaction working with them. So, and man, there's nothing like having like a shiny, fat, healthy adult female. Like they get 36 inches long, like, and they just they're cool, they're beasts, yeah. So yeah, we'll see where that goes.
That's so freaking cool. Oh, what you said you got some emerald tree boas and some womas. What else are you hiding in there? Huh?
So I have Oxyropus Fitzgerald, which are like Peruvian calico snakes. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're kind
I've
of
seen
like
them a couple times.
Yeah, they're not super common. So I have a pair of those. They were produced by Stan Grumbeck, and he had a devastating loss with his like adult male a couple years ago. So it sucks because those don't ever get imported anymore. So there's like a very small population of those even like in the States anymore. So I'm really hoping that I can get mine going. And then I have trinket snakes. Those are another project that I really love. I have the common trinket, and then I have the montane trinket, which is a different species, a subspecies. And those get a little bit bigger and they have a little bit of a different pattern. I am the only person in the States with them and potentially the only person in the world outside of India with them because they're not allowed to be exported anymore. So they're very cool. I think trinkets are on the rise too, because like they don't bite. They're super laid back right out of the egg. They eat, no fuss. Like and they don't get big. They get like, 30 inches, so it's like a really reasonably sized animal. Even the montane trinkets, they get like 4 feet or something. So it's not a big snake. And they're just, They're fascinating. I don't know. I try to share photos of them and stuff, but I think I need to share them a little bit more. What is Chris talking? Oh, I have Persian rat snakes. I have the melanistic Persian rat snakes, and then I have the melanistic Aesculapians, and I have what am I forgetting? I have Cichula, the leopard rat snakes. I'm actually importing a group of black leopard snakes next month, which is cool.
Ooh,
So those
that's
are
pretty tight.
I'm excited about that project. That'll be cool.
Heck yeah.
And then I have some Kenyans because I'm kind of a loser sometimes. So. Yeah. No, I have a small.
Wow, someone who conforms. Why are you so conforming?
No, I just can't let them go. I have a couple projects that I can't let go. So
it's okay. Rob has a ball python. It's okay.
I actually have a few ball pythons. I just don't ever post them.
Actually, I have 2 ball pythons, but they're my girls' pets. So
No, I'm just kidding.
Man.
Those trinket rats are really cool. I remember back in the day that trinkets used to come in all the time, and then radiators used to come in. And like when they're kind of had that overlap in size, people would just like mislabel them all the time.
Yep.
And I think it's funny that, not funny, but like it's interesting that you're like, oh, your trinkets are so chill, because I just remember the radiated rat snakes back then being
not chill.
absolute psychopaths.
Yeah, those are not chill snakes. Those are mean. I've tried to work with those a couple times because they really are a snake species that I'm like, every couple of years I forget how mean they are, and I'm like, man, I really want to work with radiated rats, and I'll get them, and I'm like, oh yeah, these piss everywhere while they're biting you.
It's a literally very shitty idea.
Yeah,
they bite and then pee on the bite. You're like, that's horrible. Why would you do that?
And they do that thing where they shoot out of your hands and pee while they're doing it. It's just not fun. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite. I don't know. They chill out when they get older, but it's like I much prefer my trinket snakes. I really do.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. That's cool.
I'm here for the trinkets. 100%.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is that Christen doesn't like to work with pissy snakes.
Hey, that's fair.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Very fair.
I'll take a bite from most snakes over being pissed on.
Yeah, same. Well, yeah, other than my emeralds, yeah.
Yeah.
The big scrubs, I'll take a little bit of pee, but the smaller scrubs, I'll take a bite over the pee.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You know, I get bit most by my Kenyan Sand Boas out of all of the stuff in my collection. It's always
makes sense.
Because they're waiting.
That makes sense to me.
They're waiting with their little heads poked up, and you go get the water dish, and they're like, "Oh, I gotcha." It's like
a little graboid.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I'll be like, "Oh, his head's over there," and I'm like, "Nope, his head's here," and I don't find out until I get hit or whatever. But
it's because their head looks too much like their tail.
Yeah, they do. They get me every time.
Right. Damn your defensive systems.
I know. And they hit you right in the tip of the finger where it just like hurts.
Man, side tangent, going through feeding snakes yesterday, I had like a 400-gram ball python latch onto my fingertips. And man, talk about feeling like you ain't shit. Like, dude, man. I took that retic bite to the face a couple months ago like a champ. This ball python bite had me over here like, oh, wow. Why?
I think the worst reptile bite I've ever had was an Argus monitor. And she got me so that her mouth went down these 2 fingers, and then she dug her feet in and was trying to go back with my fingers. So she was just shredding them, you know? Oh my God. That's the worst bite I've ever had.
Oh,
that's brutal.
But
man,
that's brutal.
Other than that, my worst bite, second worst, would be an emerald. So I got tagged really good by one. I had nerve damage for several years.
Damn.
Yeah.
Was it on your hand?
Yeah, it was like I think it was like right here that she got me. It was on this hand actually though, and it was just like the feeling in this whole arm was messed up for like 2 years afterward. So that's good stuff.
Emerald bites are just different.
They're just different. Yeah. Yep. I love them.
No.
I don't know. No. I know.
I like the basins, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I love my northerns. I don't know. I really well. Like I said, that was my first snake, so that's probably why
Yeah.
Right.
I'm brain damaged.
You never forget your first love, okay?
Yeah, you don't. So
That's true.
I don't know.
That's true.
That's fine.
Man.
Okay, well, we are winding down our time here. It's been a little bit over an hour, but I wanted to thank you for coming on. And we wrap
Absolutely.
up every single episode by asking our guest one question. Jeremy, would you care to ask the question?
Yes. So the question is, garter snakes or racers?
No, stop it. That's not the question.
No.
Racers.
No. The question is, the question is, what in the realm of reptiles, be it something you've got going on in your own place, something you may have seen online, scrolling through the ethers of social media, what in the realm of reptiles has you excited about reptiles right now?
You know what? Colubrid Fest. Seeing colubrids being taken
yeah.
more seriously lately. They are just in general, I feel like kind of making a comeback. And because you've got that like waning and of interest and stuff of different species going on. And I think right now a lot of people are kind of collectively like, wait a minute, what happened to the other snake species? Like we used to see all these other things, so let's bring that back. And I think I'm happy to be a part of that, to help contribute. And so like getting some of this stuff that I've had imported over the last couple of years, I imported the Montaigne trinkets, I imported the Asclepians, the melanistic ones, I imported the Persian rats, and I'm importing the black leopard rats and stuff like that. Like I think that stuff is exciting, getting that stuff back in the States and having people like looking for it and starting their own pairs. And because a lot of that stuff, like the trinkets used to be popular in the 90s and then they disappeared, and it's, I don't know why. It's just people were like, oh, brown snake syndrome, and they lost interest or whatever. But
they were like ball pythons.
It was the ball python craze, yeah.
But yeah, exactly. But and there aren't like albinos and clown phase and all this stuff. Like it's just a trinket snake. I can see how it's not even like a corn snake where you've got 15,000 different morphs now. But
right.
I think it's exciting just to have that like coming back and coming more to the forefront, and people are starting to really get interested again. So I'm excited for that. I think it's cool.
Hell yeah. Yep. I'm with that 100%.
And if people want to find out more about you and the things that you're doing, where should they look you up?
Stygian Exotics on pretty much every platform you can think of. I'm not super active on TikTok, but I have it. But I have Instagram, Facebook. I have a Tumblr if you're into that. So that you can pretty much just find me, Stygian Exotics. Soon I will have a website launching, and that's going to have all my care sheets and everything hosted, because I have like all my specific care sheets for my different species I keep. But it's in the works. I don't want to say I'm lazy, but I'm having a hard time just like getting it done.
Life is like that.
It just beats you down. So yeah, it'll soon. It's coming.
Look for it. It'll be out there. It'll be out there. by the time you're listening to this, it'll be out there. So.
Right. And so I'm looking forward to Tenley. I'm going to have a shirt that has my name on it, so people can hopefully come up and talk to me, because I had a lot of last year like, oh, I missed you, I didn't see you. So if you guys catch me at Tenley, that'd be cool too.
Hell yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting, because I was talking to Christen about this yesterday, is that so many people just post pictures of their animals that I don't really know what they look like. And so when I went to Daytona, there's a couple of people who came up and talked to me for a minute. They're like, oh, hey, I'm so-and-so. And I was like, oh, hey, like, how's it going? And they're like, wait, do you know who I am? And I'm like, not really. And then they said their screen name. And I'm like, yo, I talked to you. Oh my God, this is so cool. And didn't think that, I had no idea that was you. Maybe, hold a snake like this. I see the arm. I get it. I get it.
I recognize your hand.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, if anyone, I'm gonna have a big old, it'll say Stygian Exotics, and it'll have a big picture of my white phase male on the back. So
hell yeah,
it's gonna be pretty sweet.
That'll be awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully we can have you on again sometime to talk about more Candoia and some of the other things you're working with, because I cannot get enough of the Candoia talk.
I would love to. Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's talk about it.
Sweet.
Hell yeah.
Right. Take care.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Take care. Absolutely.